Christmas is just about here, and that means, for a lot of people, prime rib. So I'm going to be smoking up a prime rib out on the Weber Kettle tomorrow. Today, what I want to do is get a herbed butter ready, which is going to help finish it off near the end of the cooking process. And we want to get our prime rib rubbed up. So let's start with the butter. Now I have a stick of salted butter here. It's salted, so we're not going to add any additional salt to this. We're going to start with half a teaspoon of chili powder. I'm using an ancho chili powder. Next up, a teaspoon of smoked paprika, a teaspoon of dried thyme, a teaspoon of oregano, and a teaspoon of dried sage. Now this butter has been sitting out for about 45 minutes to kind of come to room temperature, and I just popped it in the microwave for 7 seconds just to sort of help it along, so we're not working with something that's really, really firm. You want to be able to incorporate all these herbs as quickly as possible here. And if the butter is nice and soft, that really helps. Now I'm going to take a small ramekin here and get our butter into it. This is just a place for it to hang out overnight in the refrigerator. I'm going to cover this with some plastic wrap. And that's going to be perfect tomorrow to finish off our prime rib. Speaking of which, let's move on to this hunk of beef. So I have about a 6-pound USDA Choice prime rib roast here, ribeye roast, whatever you want to call it. And I'm not going to do any more trimming on it. This is just fine for me right now. I do want to go ahead and get a binder on here before I get my rub. And the binder I'm going to use is this balsamic glaze from Trader Joe's. I've been using this a lot lately on beef. It works really well, does bring a little bit of extra flavor to the surface there. Now this is not a huge prime rib roast, it's a 2-bone. And for small families, couples, this is probably enough. You don't need a 6 or 7 bone roast for a small family. I mean, I've done 6 and 7 bone roasts for large gatherings and they're great, but you know, if all you've got is 3 or 4 people, this is enough. My rub today is California style rub from Sharp's Gourmet Barbecue. The other thing that's nicer about doing a small prime rib roast like this is it's a lot easier to manage with one hand as you're turning it around to get rub everywhere. Now I want to go ahead and transfer this to a pan with a rack in it so it's not sitting in its juices as it just absorbs these flavors overnight. All right, this is going in the refrigerator overnight, uncovered, and tomorrow I will see you out at the Weber Kettle. All right, the Weber Kettle is up to temp. My target today is 250 degrees, and we're going to be burning some white oak in here for some smoke once we get our prime rib on. So let's go ahead and get it going. I'm going to go bone side towards the fire today. Go ahead and get my temp probe in here. Get our piece of white oak on. Now my final internal temperature that I want today is 120 degrees. At that point, we're going to take it off, tent it, let it rest for about half an hour. But at 90 degrees, that's when we're going to add that herbed butter. And I'll melt it here next to the kettle. It'll just kind of slowly melt in a little metal container. And then we're going to drizzle it all over. So we'll come back and check it in about an hour, see how we're doing. I also want to point out, as you saw, I have a foil pan with water in there just to bring a little more moisture in there today. Don't want anything to dry out. I'm using the Mallory Firewall and the Mallory Cast Iron Grate. That's a great combination. I love using those two accessories in the kettle. Really works well. All right, we're going to let this start smoking. I'll see you back here in a bit. All right, we are at the 1 hour mark. The internal temp is right around 56 degrees. Let's go ahead and take a look at our prime rib. Wow, that's looking really good. Do want to give just a little spritz with some plain water here. Now, a lot of prime rib recipes call for a really high intense temperature at a certain point. Nothing wrong with that. I prefer to do it more low, more slow. And you can see we're getting great color on the outside. And this is before we even add our herbed butter coating to this. So we're going to get the lid on, let it keep going to 90 internal. Then we'll come back and give it that nice herbed butter coating. See you back here when we hit 90 internal. All right, we are coming up on 90 internal. Time to get our herbed butter on here. This is smelling fantastic. Gonna drizzle it on. All right, we're gonna get our lid on and let this finish to 120 internal. See you back here in a little bit. All right, we are just about to hit 120 internal. It is time to get our prime rib off so we can take it inside, tent it loosely in foil, and just let it rest, like I said, for 30 minutes. That'll bring it kind of to that 125, maybe a little higher temperature that I want. But really, you need to cook this to the doneness you like. For me, this is it. Yeah, I'm not complaining about that. All right, this is going inside, and I'll see you in about 30 minutes. Well, here it is, our prime rib with that herbed butter on it. This took 2.5 hours, roughly within a few minutes, out on the grill at 250. Rested for half an hour, so about a 3-hour process total for the cooking and the resting. The preparation takes time before. Now, you don't have to season it the night before and let it rest 24 hours in the refrigerator with those seasonings. I just like to do that. But what do you say we cut in and see how we did? I am going to go right down between the bones here. Oh, yeah, that is what I wanted. Oh, I hope you can see that nice pink center there. Actually, a pretty good doneness from edge to edge here. I'm really happy with that. Not too overcooked on the edges, but you're always going to have more cooking at the edges, especially at these smaller points and things like that, because, well, it's just thinner. The heat can get in there more quickly and penetrate it for longer than it does for the center here. But this is looking great. Let's slice some up and have a taste. Now, we do have our bone right here, and a lot of times you will see people separate from the bone. And so I'm just going to follow along the bone here. A lot of good meat on here. Do not get rid of this. Got a little bit of a juicelange going here. Piece out of the way here. I could make this look nice and pretty. I could put it on a platter here, but honestly, I just want to dive in. I want to cut some pieces up and have a taste. Let's see. I've made prime rib so many different ways on so many different cookers, also in the oven. I get great results using the Weber Kettle. I don't know what it is, it just turns out great. And smoking it a little bit slower, a little bit lower, to me, that's the perfect way to make this. This is definitely a meal for a special occasion. It's probably not something you're making every night, but when you do make it, man, it is special.